So the question is,
to sit down.
what do we believe in that has no basis in rationality?
It's a good question.
This is a good time here.
Emunah, the whole concept of belief.
Now we stand before that question, right?
Right? Belief, the whole idea of belief, right? You mean the emunah relates to many things.
Well, it's related to many different things. It's related to our, as humans, intellect, emotions, character traits, and the way we express ourselves.
Right.
Thought, speech, and action.
Right. It's connected to that. There's a whole book written about the decision making.
Right.
By a professor, Dan Ariely, if I'm not mistaken. He used to be a professor in MIT. Thank you very much.
But the idea is that to reach a point of malchut in our journey, that we go through all of the Chachma being God, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, and so forth.
Yes.
And then we choose our identity in malchut. So that's the process. That's what I wanted to show.
Right.
But the question is how do we choose what we believe in that we know is beyond rationality?
How do we, again?
Because we make a choice.
The whole concept of emunah is, it's also sure for itself. What is faith? Once a person says, we know what faith is? Faith is that if I will tell you that I say that I believe that whoever created the world is a cup of tea, that...
A cup of tea?
Something like that. A cup of tea, it's a famous expression because it's a misunderstanding of the concept of belief.
Only in England.
Only in England. So that maybe it's the person from there that he brings that belief is something beyond understanding, beyond connection. That's not the meaning of belief, truly. Belief, there was once a big argument. There's a TV, a guy that works in the TV that he interviews people. He likes to bring controversial people in Israel in order to argue with them. And his argues a lot are about faith, about belief. And once he brought Rabbi Yoel Khan. Rabbi Yoel Khan, was just his shloshim. He passed away a bit more than a month ago. And Rabbi Yoel, he was the chayzer of the Rebbe. The chayzer means he used to repeat the fabregans, the sichas, the talks, the ma'amorim of the Rebbe. He used to memorize it all by heart, 5-6 hours and more of talks. And that's Rabbi Yoel. So he brought him to argue with him. It wasn't on the television, but it was an argument that he made out of an article. And guess what? What did Rabbi Yoel reply? Or the truth is, what did this interviewer say? He said, it's so hard to debate with you. Why? Because I claim that I'm not a believer, and you claim that I truly am a believer. In other words, what Rabbi Yoel was telling him is basically, even if you say you don't believe, you truly do believe. Because the whole idea of believing, the whole idea of emunah, isn't connected to any understanding or to any theory that lays out there. It's not a cup of tea. Our belief that Hashem created the world isn't like what people might believe, that there is some kind of random person out there that creates the world. No. Our belief comes from our neshama. It comes from who we are. We cannot go against this belief.
But there's a collective belief that makes us Jewish. It's a collective.
That's the whole point. That it's not a belief. It's not an external belief. It's not the idea of something that makes us believers. Why do we believe? And why are we Jewish? It's not something that's acquired. It's something that we're born as, or with the whole process of Gerut. So we become new people.
We choose.
Right? But it's irrational. But it's not irrational in a way that it's external to us. Like someone will say, yes, I believe that this and this happened. No. That's not the idea of true belief. True belief means that it's a part of who we are. It's part of us. It's our neshama. Belief doesn't come in an external way. That's a person that wants to say that he believes. He wants to bring an excuse. That's what they try to say, that belief starts after we can't understand. As long as we can understand and agree, there's no point for belief. If everything was rational, I wouldn't believe in anything. I would say I can explain to you everything according to understanding, according to chokhmah, bina, and dat. That's not the way Judaism looks at belief. We start believing. The kid, when he's at 3 years old, that's what he grows with. And when you become older and you understand things, you don't leave the belief behind because you say, well, now I'm rational. No, the belief is part of who we are. This is our parsha, by the way. We could talk about it, even though I prepared something a bit about King David and Bathsheba. So it's a very wide concept. The whole, but because we brought it up in the previous year, so I said we should discuss just the basic points. But let's finish this with our parsha. There's an argument between the Maimonides and the Ra'avad. Ra'avad was his competitor in a certain way. They used to argue a lot between each other. The book of the Maimonides, have you ever saw the book of the Maimonides? It's an interesting book. It's him. And then there's these small inserts that the Ra'avad points out. The Ra'avad was older than the Maimonides. But nevertheless, he saw it as such an important writing that he decided to insert certain things that he argues. What does the Maimonides say? When did when did Abraham figure out the existence of Hashem?
So in the age of 3.
Sorry?
In the age of 3.
Good point. The Maimonides doesn't bring 3. You're right.
It looks like it symbolically means as a young man he already had an understanding.
Right.
Most people I met, they say something in the age of 16 they started to think about it.
Right. 100%. What is the difference between someone at the age of 60 or someone at the age of 3? So
Experience.
Sorry?
Experience.
What do you mean by that?
Experience is what you go for life and observe and
Good point.
learn.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
That was the Midrash that teaches us that that's the way that Avraham Avinu figured out the existence of Hashem. The Maimonides speaks about, and he says that Avraham Avinu figured it out at the age of 40. And the Ra'avad says what you just say, that at the age of 3. These are midrashim, these are tales that our scholars told us for years, that at the age of 3, that was the time that Avraham figured out the existence. What is the argument here?
I think the
Age of 3, age of 40, he figured it out. What did Avraham Avinu, did he not know these tales, these midrashim, that Avraham knew it already at the age of 3?
I think the argument that Maimonides makes, and he might apply to the patriarchs, is the idea that of knowing what Hashem is not. And that could occur at age 3, or it could occur at age 40 or 60.
So the Maimonides says the age of 40. He doesn't mention the age of 3.
No. But the point is, I think that that is the idea of understanding from the negative.
Okay, so you're giving interesting words to it, but that's one of the points that the Rebbe speaks about. You're saying that a deeper understanding comes at the age of 40. When a kid's 3 years old, what does he understand?
But
3 years...
independent of the age,
Sorry?
independent of the age is a process. Independent of the age.
It's right. It's a process, but there's a certain timeline when you can acquire all these things. At the age of 3, at least what we see today is that at the age of 3, the understanding is very limited. So, but what is there at the age of 3? Belief. That's why the argument between the Ravad and the Maimonides is basically between what is stronger, what is the ultimate goal? Belief, the age of 3, like the Ravad says, or a deep understanding that only comes at the age of 40. And then, yes, it could be connected to understanding what not. Again, once a person goes through a certain process and his mind is developed enough, he can understand in a better way. So this is also connected to the pasuk that is in our parsha. Our parsha is Nitzavim, and Nitzavim has a pasuk that says Ki karov elecha hadavar me'od b'ficha u'bilvavcha la'asoto. This pasuk means that this thing is very close to you, in your mouth, in your heart, and in your actions, which is a mysterious pasuk, because how is Judaism close to us? Judaism, being observant, keeping the mitzvot, isn't something that we could really say that it's close. There's many challenges. So there's a story. Let's see, 1 second. There is a story about a person that dreamt a dream. He lived in Krakow, in Poland. Krakow is, till this very day, there's a few interesting shuls over there. There's a Jewish shul, an old shul that we'll talk about in a moment.
Have you been there?
I have been there, yeah. I was lucky to be there on one of the times that I went to Shlichut. In Chabad, we go often to help out as young bochrim, as young students in the yeshiva. So we go out in the summer or through the Chagim to help out other Chabad houses. So once I went to Poland, and I took the opportunity also, and I went to Krakow. This person lived in Krakow. He dreamt a dream at night. Dreamt a dream that beneath the bridge of Prague is...
Treasure.
Sorry?
There was a treasure.
There was a treasure, exactly. You know that story. So that led this person to travel all the way to Prague and to start searching around the bridge, underneath the bridge. And the guards saw that, and it seemed a bit suspicious. This Jew is searching around, trying to find, maybe he's a bit digging. So they said, well, what's going on? And they turned to him. This guard came up to him and he told him, what are you doing? What are you looking for? So he said, well, I dreamt a dream that beneath the bridge of Prague, there is a treasure. This guard hears it, he starts bursting out laughing, and he says, oh, what a funny person you are. And you know what I dreamt? I dreamt that there's a Jew by the name of Yaakov in Krakow, and beneath his oven, there is also a treasure. Yaakov was so happy. He said, great. I found my treasure. Went back to his house, and he dug up the oven and found there a treasure.
Oh,
Now this sounds like a funny story, but it's true. How do we know that it's true? There's a shul that he built with the money, part of the money that he found, and this shul stays in Krakow till this very day. So I think that there's even Krakow, it's very interesting. If I'm not mistaken, there's even the place where he is buried, actually, there. So what's this point of a treasure? We're going back to the concept of belief. What is the idea of believing? We've got a treasure. This treasure isn't underneath the oven, it's inside us. But it's the same thing, it's in our house, it's who we are. And this is how Ki karov eilecha hadavar me'od beficha u'bilvavcha la'asoto. Yes, keeping Torah and mitzvahs is close to us. How close? It hides beneath the oven in our homes. In other words, it's inside us. This is the neshama, this is the concept of belief. And this starts at a young age and continues forever. Even when we understand, this is where Hasidus comes and tries to combine the two together. We try and combine between understanding and belief. Get the benefits of both. If we only, I used to go to Mivtzoim, which is basically to put on tefillin for Jewish people in Manhattan. If I'm not mistaken, it was 52nd Street, Manhattan, business buildings, and there was this one person that never wanted to put on tefillin. He always nicely opened his office door, but he never wanted to put on tefillin. He said, well, I'm a good enough person. Why? I give charity. I do everything without relation to Hashem, without connection to God. And he said, that's good enough. Why do I need to connect to Hashem? This was an argument that went on and on and on for all the time. And I try to tell him one thing, that relying on our understanding and our logic, and because of that being a good person without connecting it to God, isn't good. And what proves it? History proves it. Where? 1939. The Second World War, the Holocaust taught us that people that might seem the most rational people, the most educated people, the most Anshe Tarbut, which is basically the Germans, they always had the best culture. The best culture. They were considered to be a nation that people would look up to. All the most famous piano players and philosophical people and doctors came from Germany. But if you don't rely on belief, on a connection to Hashem, your mind might turn you off the way one day. We cannot just rely on the mind. They had a whole theory about it. It wasn't just the whole idea, the whole logic of race. There was a whole idea behind it. So right, it's a wrong idea. But nevertheless, if we rely on our understanding, on our minds only, without saying, I believe, Lo Tirtzach is based on, why in the 10 Commandments, very interesting. 10 Commandments, Hashem is there on Mount Sinai, giving us over the Torah, the tablets. What does he choose to write on these tablets? Such basic rules. Don't steal. Don't kill. Why? Respect your parents. These are simple things. Did we travel all the way and stand in front of Mount Sinai just to hear these basic logical things?
But I think each society was built around one of the inverse of the commandments. That there were societies that really depended to work on thievery.
Right. It's a good point.
So that was the point. Hashem was addressing each of these.
Right.
And to say that we want a society that not only does not have these things, but compositely has something much greater. And that is what brings us closer to Hashem.
Right.
And we can't do it any other way, because otherwise we start making things up.
Oh, we start making things up. It's a good point. So, once again, but if we're talking about the Jewish people, or about a nice amount of the nations, it says that we would learn not to steal from an ant. From an ant. Why do we learn that from an ant? Because an ant does not steal from its friend, works very, very hard to go and get its own a small piece of whatever it is. And modesty we would learn from cats. Cats are very modest. Tzniut. So once again, right, it could help certain cultures, certain people. But again, standing in front of Mount Sinai and giving us these laws is to tell us not to make things up. Not to make things up, and to understand that even these basic rules, their foundation is belief. That Hashem commands us to do it. And the next portion, what comes after the portion of Matan Torah? Mishpatim. Laws. Laws that are logical laws. That means you've got to pay someone when you take it. How much does a person that steals have to return? A person that harms someone else's property has to pay for it. Logical laws. But what does it say there? ve'ele mishpatim, and these are the laws. Why do we need to have an and? What and? And connects it to Mount Sinai and tells us once again that although it's a logical thing, although it's something that we can understand in our minds, and we don't need the help of Hashem, we base it on belief. By the way, we aren't allowed to go to regular judges. We are not allowed to go for justice to a local court. Why not? We've got to go to Bet Din. Why do we need to go to Bet Din? This isn't an argument about whether I'm a tzaddik or I'm not a tzaddik. This isn't about marriage. This is about whether I owe him 10 shekel or not. Why do I need to go to a Bet Din for that? Why don't I go to any logical court? Once again, our Torah is based on belief, on the connection to Hashem. From time to time we get these moments where we can understand it. For example, the history can teach us that we've got to rely on belief, on Hashem always. There's a lot of other theories that are based on belief. There are certain, for example, the 12 steps, if I'm not mistaken, which is a certain process to help addicted people in certain fields. And there, one of the most important concepts is to rely on God. And that's the way that people cure themselves. So, and it's in many other fields as well. Many other fields that the connection to Hashem is what gives us the power. That's what gives us the ability to keep mitzvot. Let's talk a bit about strategy. Strategy, it's very interesting. We find it in coming up now in the Chagim. And there's certain customs that will teach us the strategy of winning our judgment day. Where do we see these things? And it's very interesting because, let me give you an example. Rosh Hashanah, what is special about the first day of the year? Not only it's the first day of the year, but it's also the first day of the month of Tishrei. We begin a new month. Do we say anything connected to the month? No. We don't mention that this is a special day because it is the first day of Tishrei. Every Shabbat Mevarchim, we're going to do it this Shabbos. Shabbos Mevarchim, what is a Shabbat Mevarchim? When we bless the new month. When we bless the new month, we say a special prayer before Musaf on Shabbat. This Shabbos.
Hashem blesses.
Perfect. Hashem blesses the month, we don't bless the month.
Which gives us the authority for the other month.
Right. That's a word of Chassidus. You're saying a word that Chassidus says. Hashem blesses the month and He gives us the power, the strength to continue blessing the other 11 months. There's another explanation to not saying this blessing. We want to confuse
The Satan.
Exactly. We want to confuse the Satan.
That's also why we have shofar blessing.
Very good. A few other customs. One, this is why we have a shofar blowing throughout the entire month. Why do we have it throughout the entire month? By the way, let me tell you something that the Rebbe, when they suggested to go out, we always do Mivtza Shofar, which is called Mivtza Shofar, which is blowing shofar for people. So people ask the Rebbe, why should we just keep it on Rosh Hashanah? Or maybe let's go throughout the entire month, walk around, blow as much shofar as possible. Rebbe said, don't do that. Because people might think that they already filled the obligation of hearing the shofar, while the true obligation is on Rosh Hashanah. So why do we blow the shofar throughout these 30 days? We blow the shofar to confuse the Satan. That is the reason. We are doing it in two ways. We're first of all showing that we are already, this is where psychology comes in, this is where this strategy of winning the Satan comes in, where we're already showing how we won the case. We won the case already. This is basically, we already returned to Hashem, we already did Teshuvah, we already blowed the shofar, Perfect. So we are already in a good position, right? So this strategy is applied to many fields. By the way, there's a very interesting person that he is a doctor in communications. He also served in the army as a rabbi. He was lecturing in the army once, and then there was one of the generals that saw him lecturing. He told him, we need you for something else. Let's leave out rabbis. We can find rabbis are very important, and there's a lot of place for them in the army. But we need you specifically for something else. What does he do? He basically plays this strategic war that happens behind scenes. It's not, these are what's called Milchemet Toda'ah. The word Toda'ah in English is...
Was it virtual?
Not virtual, it's to play with the mind, basically. A psychological war that happens behind scenes. How does that work? So he says that he writes articles for the German Bild, for example, the newspaper. Or for another newspaper, he sends out some kind of information. The Hezbollah reads that information.
Oh, to confuse them?
To confuse them, exactly.
Disinformation.
Disinformation, and not only technical disinformation, but also to change their mindset about the way they think about Israel, about the Israeli government, about the Israeli army, about the feeling of the people in Israel, how united they are, how prepared for war they are.
Yeah, like there is a son of one of the crazy leaders of Hamas that left, and I think he probably became a Christian, but
I think I've heard of that story. It happened 20 years ago or something.
It's on YouTube.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And that is a lot because of the psychological war that happens behind the scenes. So we use these techniques, and he has the technique that we use for the Satan. There's a few others. So we mentioned one is blowing the shofar throughout the whole month. That's one thing. Second thing is that we don't blow it the day before Rosh Hashanah. Erev Rosh Hashanah, you'll come to shul next Monday. We don't blow the shofar.
Wasn't the world created on Rosh Hashanah?
So it's a good question.
Man was created on Rosh Hashanah.
Man was created on Rosh Hashanah, right?
Not the world.
Not the world. The world was created 6 days before. So there's a whole question that about why do we say that this is the beginning of your actions? It says, Zeh hayom tchilat ma'asecha. Why do we say, well, it started 6 days ago. Chafhei, the 25th day of Elul, that's the day that Hashem created the world. But the purpose of creating the world was to create man. And that's why at the end of the day we say that, yes, we prepared the world a bit before, but when did Hashem really create the world? That was creating man.
Also, creating man was a different process
100%, nachon.
than the way the rest of the world was.
Exactly, the rest of the world.
Spoke, and the world came into being.
Nachon.
With humans, well, I don't know what you say Adam is, but it was with
Humans. Breath, exactly. Vayipach v'apav nishmas chayim. Exactly, it's a deeper connection to humans. And right, that's why Rosh Hashanah is the important day after all.
Hashem said, let us make man.
Right? It's also Hashem says, let us make, because he consulted with his betim. He consulted with his betim. And the way they translated it is not let us, because they didn't want to show. It was a story about Talmai HaMelech. He was a king, he was a Greek king. And he gathered 70 different rabbis, put them each in a different room, and gave them the Torah to translate. Miraculously, they all made the same corrections in order for him not to misinterpret the meaning of the Torah. For example, Na'aseh Adam, let us make a man. They translated it without us but me. So they shouldn't think that there are two gods. Okay, so back to our subject. Second thing is that we don't blow the shofar the day before Rosh Hashanah. Third thing is that we don't mention Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Hashanah itself. Rosh Hashanah is not only the beginning of the year, but it's the beginning of the month. Why don't we bring that to our strength, to help us out, to seek Hashem's justice and to seek Hashem's kindness? We should add the additional special day, Rosh Hashanah. We should add the beginning of the month as well. So here we've got 3 strategies.
So I just wanted to point out that both speech and blowing life into Nasa, it's both moving air. One is a more concentrated movement, but they both move air.
Right.
So that's
Right, 100%.
that's amazing.
Life, nachon. That's life, and in 2 different ways, 100%. So here we've got a question we've got to understand. What is the whole idea here behind confusing the Satan? He's not a human. He isn't someone that you could really confuse, like not blowing the shofar the day before. He'll say, oh, they probably gave up. They gave up the whole thing. He's not a human like anyone else. So what is the idea behind trying to confuse him?
Because it's contained within us.
Sorry?
Because it's contained within us.
What do you mean?
So we would make up, if we wanted to disprove something, we would make up our own arguments to do that. And that creates different groups of people. We have different tribes and different societies because they believe something that they share amongst themselves.
Right.
So we would create what's the time, whatever that's supposed to mean, we create. But the end result is it's a movement away from Hashem.
It's a movement away from Hashem. So what we've got over here is a certain psychological approach to these days of Rosh Hashanah. And we see it in these 3 ways. First of all, our judgment day, we say it's Rosh Hashanah. The truth is that every single day throughout the year, if someone does a right Teshuvah, Hashem grants him with a great year coming up. So this starts already during Elul. Therefore, when we blow the shofar in the times of Elul, we can return to Hashem, and Hashem will grant us an early new year. So it's not just that we're trying to confuse the Satan and try to blow the shofar as many times possible throughout the month of Elul to make him confused. No, this is something true. When we say we're trying to confuse him, this means that the psychological war has an effect. It's like that when we say to Hezbollah that Israel is so strong, they actually won't go to war. And that's why when a person does Teshuvah during the month of Elul, when he has the ability to, when he hears the shofar, he's already granted, he won the war. He's granted a new year and a happy year. So that is the first way to understand this, the first technique that we do. This is all to prepare for Rosh Hashanah. But definitely, if we are able to win the war before, great.
But Satan isn't a human.
Sorry?
So that's a human device. But Satan is not human.
Right.
So why do we think that that has an effect on him?
Because a person truly did Teshuvah. The effect on him is that he's trying to challenge us not to do Teshuvah. That's the idea. He doesn't want us to do Teshuvah. He doesn't want us to return to Hashem. And this idea of starting to blow the shofar before is to actually cause us to do Teshuvah before. Even the Satan, he has certain times where he's heard. And where he has an influence. And he works still during the time of Elul. But nevertheless, we are told to start doing Teshuvah before. It's more similar, not to a psychological war, but to the war, the 1967 war, where Israel, at the beginning of the war, they already bombed the air force of the Egyptians. And that pretty much ended the war from start. So what we are doing is we're returning to Hashem in advance, at the beginning. That's the idea of causing him to become confused. It's not really that he's human, so we're trying to trick him around. We're trying to work on ourselves at the end of the day. The message is not to him. The message is to ourselves. How do we know? Because repeatedly this happens every single year. Didn't the Satan figure it out last year? He said, well, they're blowing the shofar already at the beginning. I better start doing something. It's to us the message. The message is to tell us, return to Hashem now. Not tomorrow. Don't wait till Rosh Hashanah. Start your journey now. So that is the first technique. Let's see, we've got also a few other techniques. Let's talk about this Rosh Chodesh, and here is another technique. What happens if someone is too confident in himself? He believes in himself so much, he says, I'm so good, I'm so strong, I'll be able to overcome it. The Yom Kippur War, for example. One of the biggest mistakes is that Israel thought that they're unbeatable, no one's going to try to fight them again after the 6-day war. They are strong enough, they don't have to be on the guard all the time. This caused them to suffer many casualties and nearly to lose a big part of Israel. And Chas v'Shalom, I don't know what else could have happened. Should never happen. And what happens if they would come from a point where they wouldn't be so confident in themselves? They would make sure, they would double check that everything is okay. This is the second technique behind not mentioning Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Hashanah. Each day has a special and unique light that comes and shines on us during that day. Rosh Chodesh has a special light. Why don't we bring this light to help us win the judgment? Truth is, Hashem tells us, do not rely too much on these special lights that happen on this day. Don't think that you're so confident. Don't be so confident. Don't think that you're automatically going to win the war, that you're automatically going to be judged for good. Work on it. Work on it, return to Hashem, and that is why we don't mention, we take away something from this day. We don't mention the idea that this is Rosh Chodesh. Why? Again, not to be too confident in ourselves. And this is the second technique that Am Yisrael does. Here's a story, a very interesting story, that shows us once again this idea. There was once a Jew that came into the Rabbi Rashab to ask for a blessing. He had a very serious issue that bothered him, and he entered the room of the Rabbi Rashab, bursted out crying, and at the beginning he didn't start crying, he just asked for whatever he wanted, whatever he needed. And the Rabbi Rashab said, I'm very sorry, unfortunately, I cannot help you. I cannot help you. He leaves the room and then he starts crying. He starts crying, and the brother of the Rebbe saw this Jew crying outside, and he said, well, what happened? So he said, I went into the Rebbe, your brother, but he didn't give me the blessing. I asked for a specific issue. So the brother went into the Rebbe's room and told him, why did you help this person, this Jew? So the Rebbe said, okay, bring him in once again. He brought him in and he gave him a blessing that everything should be okay. What happened here? Why didn't he give the blessing in advance? What happened afterwards? Is there a need for connections? Do you need to bring the brother of the Rebbe to sort things out? It doesn't work that way. The point is that this person that asked the blessing, he wasn't in a state that he felt that he really needs it. He wasn't in a point where he really said, I really need this blessing. He came and he asked it in a regular way, so the Rebbe said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. When he started crying, when it started to truly bother him, he became a vessel, he became a kli for the blessing of the Rebbe. And that's why it worked in this way, where at the beginning he didn't receive the bracha. Why? Because he wasn't worthy of receiving the bracha. But when he truly needed the bracha, that is when the Rebbe gave him. And that's why we don't mention Rosh Chodesh. We don't mention Rosh Chodesh because we want to feel something that we aren't so confident in our position. We aren't so sure that everything will be okay. We want to come to Hashem a bit needy, or not needy, but in a way where we really ask Him for a Shana Tova. If we'd say, you know what, this is Rosh Chodesh, this is Rosh Hashanah, special lights that shine in the world during these days, Hashem, everything will be okay. Hashem say, you know what, not sure if everything's going to be okay. But when we show Him that we don't rely on these special days, but we want to basically return to Hashem, we need Hashem, that is when He'll truly grant us Shana Tova. So these are basically the techniques that are brought in the customs of these months, of this month, the month of Elul. Beseder, Yeshar Koach, we're going to finish a bit early.